What's going on, guys? It's Scott here and welcome back to Fudge Muppet. Today I've got a brand new Skyrim remastered build for you, complete with a fleshed out backstory, revolutionary role-playing, and freshly picked skills. This is the Soldier of Fortune. The Soldier of Fortune is the ultimate warrior merchant hybrid. With his shining sword and hypnotizing illusion spells, he can take down any opposition, and with his sharp silver tongue, he could sell fire to a pyromancer. The Soldier of Fortune spent no time studying in any formal education, but utilized street smarts and entrepreneurial ambition to learn the inner workings of the mind, and he uses this knowledge to squeeze every septum out of those he deals with. The Soldier of Fortune dons his Daedric artifact, the Mask of Clavicus File, to make a lasting impression both in business and in battle. For an in-depth guide on how to get your hands on this fantastic helmet, head on down to the description where you can find a link to our very good friend Camelworks channel. There you'll find a brand new video on this piece of armor and how to get it, as well as top-notch content. So go check him out and tell him hi from us. Also in the description are timestamps to help you navigate throughout the video, but with that out of the way, let's get into the Soldier of Fortune's race, standing stone, and stats. The Soldier of Fortune is an Imperial of Cyrodiil. As an Imperial, he can call on his voice of the Emperor to calm nearby humanoids for 60 seconds. He can also use his Imperial luck to find more gold in his travels. He'll also have a natural advantage of +5 to heavy armor and +5 to one-handed, which will help out a lot with his build. At the start of the game, you'll want to take the Lover Stone for optimal leveling in all of your skills, but after that it has to be the Atronach Stone. Of all the options available, this really is the only viable pick for any build that isn't a pacifist. 50% spell absorption is critical, and 50 points of magicka on top of that is 100% worthwhile. You'll suffer a 50% magicka regen deduction, but with illusion magic you won't be casting constantly anyway. As for the stats, the Soldier of Fortune stat spread will be 50% health, 40% magicka, and 10% stamina. 50% health will keep your heart beating in battle, while 40% magicka will ensure that you always have the resources to cast one of your illusion spells in a tricky situation. Stamina isn't the most important, as the Soldier's sword is hardly his go-to approach, so with your powerful spells you won't need to swing your sword frantically to get the best of your opponents, so 10% is more than enough. The Soldier of Fortune was born in Bravil, one of the southernmost cities of Cyrodiil. His parents were simple labourers, and they lived a poor life in a shack suspended 20 feet high atop a stack of shoddy wooden homes. Despite its relatively small size, the city had a large population. The Soldier of Fortune figured that this was due to the fact that families of 5 to 10 shared tiny abodes, and those unfortunate enough to live on the top of the shack were in a constant state of fear whenever a light breeze passed through the area. The soldier learned to be self-sufficient from a very young age, as his parents could not afford to waste any daylight hours not working. As a child with no understanding of caution or self-pity, the soldier enjoyed the view from his home. He liked the groans and creaks that came from the worn-out wooden slats which barely supported them. To him it was like he was a wealthy military general, surveying the surrounding areas, making sure his troops were all in line. The bedroom window, if you could call a hole in the wall a window, overlooked a portion of the river and the markets on the other side. He would watch the intrigue as people engaged in battles of wit and stubbornness, haggling and dueling over every coin. It was like some kind of game. These people didn't care about 1 or 2 coins, yet backing down was some kind of pride-pummeling defeat. When the Soldier of Fortune was old enough to venture out into the streets of Bravil, he found that he had a lot of time on his hands. His parents couldn't afford to educate him, but his curiosity led him to the markets. Before he even had a firm grip on the common tongue, he was discovering ways to persuade people. He had a knack for knowing what people wanted to hear, and he used that to get what he wanted. After some time exploring the markets, he decided it was time to participate in the game. He left Bravil without his parents' knowledge and ventured out into the fields and forests surrounding the city. Here he collected various fruits and flowers in a discarded box he'd found. He brought these home and mixed the juice that came from the fruits with the water from the river. The resulting concoctions were little more than watered-down fruit juice in theory, but they smelled and tasted lightly exotic and refreshing. The Soldier of Fortune justified to himself that, technically speaking, these were alchemical elixirs, and he couldn't prove that they didn't have any of the properties of an arcane or mystical nature. So operating under that assumption, he took them to the markets and sold them to gullible customers as remedies for all their woes. Funnily enough, people paid a pretty penny for a placebo effect. The Soldier of Fortune learned more of mathematics and literacy in the markets than he would ever have done being traditionally educated. As a result, he became naturally savvy, and his primary understanding of calculations and language revolved around money. One bright Maundy, some Imperial soldiers passed through Breville on Legion business. The Soldier of Fortune was enthralled by the subtle differences in their accents and their fine, polished steel they garbed themselves in. They had come to recruit, and the Soldier of Fortune saw this as an opportunity to expand his wings and leave the limiting nest that is the glorified shantytown of Breville. He enlisted in the army and rode north to the Citadel. As he rode up to the city gates, the sheer size of the city took his breath away. The Imperial city made Breville look like a Khajiit litter tray. The Soldier of Fortune trained with the Imperial Army for the next few years, honing his skills with a sword and performing mundane activities like patrolling the city streets in the evening. One afternoon, he is tasked with patrolling the Market District. The district was bustling with vibrant chatter and the scents from every corner of Tamriel. There were perfume vendors from the Somerset Isles, armourers from the frozen tundra of Skyrim, smiths from Hammerfell, and booksellers from Morrowind. There was something for everyone here, and the Soldier of Fortune's passion for barter came back in full force. He began spending his free time in the markets, plotting his newest questionable scams and haggling over items he had no particular need for. One particular Imperial, a small rodent of a man with cunning demeanour and a sleazy smile, had a voice that rose above the rest. He caught the soldier's attention and they engaged in conversation. The merchant's name was Derek, and he claimed with a madman's conviction that he could sell snow to a Nord. The soldier found himself learning all kinds of manipulation techniques from his encounters with the man, and they developed a friendship out of mutual respect and business favors. The soldier would approach Derek's stall under the guise of a deeply satisfied customer, singing Derek's praise loud enough for all the bystanders to hear, and then, as if by magic, he would sell all the day's wares within the hour. When the Soldier of Fortune recommenced brewing his alchemical elixirs, Derek returns the favor, posing as a sickly old man who'd regained the use of his legs by some divine intervention, or perhaps by the effects of the soldier's fruity beverages. With his profits, the Soldier of Fortune took an interest in illusion magic. He heard from the Dunmer bookseller of the possibilities of illusion spells, and his interest was piqued. Although he never used magicka to influence his bartering, that felt immoral and took the fun out of outwitting customers and clerks. Despite his creatively deceptive means for making a sale, the Soldier of Fortune never broke the law until the day he learned he was being transferred to Leyawind. The notion of returning to the swampy landscapes of Cyrodiil South was enough to justify his desertion. The Soldier of Fortune bid farewell to his old friend Derek, packed his belongings and his entrepreneurial wealth, and headed north to Skyrim. There was a civil war in action, and the Soldier of Fortune knew that nothing made an economy thrive like a good and bloody war. With his military training and silver tongue, there would be no better neutral arms dealer in all of the land. His eyes had turned green at the prospect. The Soldier of Fortune crossed the border into Skyrim, but unfortunately, he was caught, stripped of his gold and his belongings, and carted off to Helgen. Upon escaping his grisly fate, the Soldier of Fortune considers himself rather lucky. He is frustrated about the disappearance of his hard-earned belongings, but he fully intends to make back his losses quick-smart. His primary goal is to make money by any means, within the law, of course. He considers himself too silver-tongued to stoop to common thievery, so he will trade fairly, relying on his cunning alone to make money. As he is skilled as both a warrior and a merchant, he will not be afraid to trek into dangerous territory to make a sale. He won't hesitate to use illusion spells when his life is in danger, but his love for the game of bartering stops him from cheating people out of their money in the market. Most importantly, the Soldier of Fortune is driven by the pursuit of wealth. His one true love is the sound of a full purse swinging from his belt. He steers clear of quests of questionable morality, but as a salesman, his ears are always open when the money is right, so that belief isn't set in stone. The aim of the soldier's game is to get septims out of other people's pockets and into his own, so long as doing so doesn't break the law. After all, a dungeon would not suit his high roller lifestyle. As for factions, the Soldier of Fortune will follow the main story, publicly endorsing the Dragonborn status. All good merchants know that all publicity is good publicity, and not only will all of those Dragonbones make him enough gold to buy a small kingdom, but who wouldn't buy weapons and armor from a guy who can slay dragons? The quality speaks for itself. He will join the Dawn Guard in search of valuable items and artifacts. He will enroll in the College of Winterhold to further his illusion knowledge. He'll finish the Dragonborn DLC to spread his influence to Skyrim, and he'll join the Companions for additional contracts and cash quests. The Soldier of Fortune will also buy Proudspire Manor in Solitude or make a house of his own using the Hearthfire DLC. With his backstory, role-playing, and factions in mind, let's have a look at his skills, spells, perks, and playstyle. The main skills for this build are one-handed heavy armor, a new addition enchanting, illusion, and speech. While he's hardly a wizard, the Soldier of Fortune shares something in common with them, and that's curiosity. Understanding the inner workings of the mind is fancy talk for manipulating, and no one manipulates better than a salesman. The spells used for this build all revolve around mind control, so you want to pick up all the fear, pacify, and frenzy spells to send adversaries fleeing, to tame them, or to pit them against each other. And with that said, let's look at the Soldier of Fortune's essential perks. While he had his qualms with the Imperial Legion, the Soldier of Fortune wouldn't have made it to where he is today without them. He'd likely still be selling from a makeshift stall in a tiny market in Breville. Not only this, but he learned some valuable skills which he could use to make money and protect himself and his wares wherever he may travel. And the soldiers of the Imperial Army are experts with one-handed weapons. From the one-handed skill tree, you should take the middle branch up to Savage Strike. The majority of his perk points may be best allocated elsewhere, but with these perks he should pack enough punch to fend for himself. With Savage Strike, standing power attacks do 25% more damage and have a chance to decapitate the enemy. In a similar vein to one-handed, the Soldier of Fortune protects himself from trouble on the road by wearing formidable armor. From this skill tree, we recommend taking everything except for matching set and reflect blows. Most of these are simply important for survival, but conditioning is one of note. This perk removes the weight of the armor, allowing you to carry more valuable goods, and heavy armor won't slow you down. The new addition to this build comes in the form of enchanting. The Soldier of Fortune gets his reputation by selling the very best wares. That may have been less true when he was wheeling and dealing in the streets, but he still knows that having the best stock leads to profit. With the enchanting skill, he can enhance the gear he sells, and he can enhance the gear he uses himself, augmenting his talents and sharpening his strengths. From this skill tree, you'll want to go for the middle branch all the way up to extra effect. With Insightful Enchanter, skill enchantments on armor are 25% stronger, meaning you can massively boost your speech skill, for example, by enchanting an amulet with Fortify Barter. And with extra effect, you can put 2 enchantments on the same item, making it even stronger. Next up is Illusion, and as I'm sure you know by now, the Soldier of Fortune's livelihood revolves around knowing how to use people's minds and motives to benefit himself, and in battle, he takes that to the next level with Illusion Magic. From this skill tree, we suggest taking everything except for Master Illusion, as this build will not be using any Master level spells. Ones to pay attention to here are Hypnotic Gaze, Aspect of Terror, and Rage. These 3 perks increase the level of enemy you can use Pacify, Fear, and Frenzy spells on respectively. Finally, it's time for the main attraction. This is where the Soldier of Fortune puts his money where his mouth is, and then he turns it into a profit. This is, of course, speech. Thanks to his own entrepreneurial attitude and the connections he's made along the way, the Soldier of Fortune could sell sunlight to a vampire. From this skill tree, take everything. Perks from the left branch improve bartering like Merchant, which allows you to sell any type of item to any kind of merchant, and perks from the right branch improve dialogue options like Persuasion, which increases the success rate of persuasion attempts by 30%. The Soldier of Fortune's playstyle should be pretty clear by now. Outside of battle, he will use his Silver Tongue assisted by his enchanted apparel to sell the goods he acquires in his travels, and then he can use that money to buy properties all over Skyrim and soul gems to recharge his sword. In battle, he will use his military training wielding a sword in one-handed, while using magic in the form of illusion spells to manipulate his enemies. That may be non-violent, or it may mean turning brother on brother for his entertainment. Either way, he can be quite convincing. As for his gear, the Soldier of Fortune will wear steel plate armor, except rather than a steel helmet, he'll wear the Mask of Clavicus Vile for its useful enchantment and badass appearance. Under this, he'll wear a gold diamond necklace and ring, partially as a status symbol, but also for the added enchantments. All of these items should be enchanted with an assortment of Fortify Barter, Fortify One-Handed, Fortify Carryweight, and Fortify Illusion. For his weapon, he'll use a glass sword enchanted with Absorb Health and Paralyze. Subscribe to Fudge Muppet for great fortune to be bestowed upon you, and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. That concludes our latest Skyrim remastered build, the Soldier of Fortune. Check out the description for links to our social media accounts where you can keep up to date on everything Fudgy, as well as timestamps to help you navigate throughout the video. Don't forget to continue down into the comment section to vote for which build we remaster next. Your choices this week are the Bandit and the Bandit. You choose. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Scott, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very, very soon.